Hello, and a very good and a very good afternoon to you all. You're welcome to Fire Service in Focus here on the Fire Service TV. My name is Edu One Alex Kingnati. Um, should I say sitting in for my regular alum wherever he is? I pray for speedy recovery for him. And please do remember that this program is brought to us by kind courtesy of Blue Financial Services. They are very exciting packages for government workers, military, fire, police, and so do well to call their numbers on 0303 968 196 and you'll be amazed by the lovely surprise they have for you. Today we'll be talking about a very important topic that has to do with the structures that gets affected by buildings, and as firefighters what we should know and do moving forward. I have my exciting bosses here to help us delve into the issue. We'll go for a commercial break, and when we come back, we'll delve much more. Please do well to tune in to. If you are not close to your TVs, please do well to join us online on Facebook, on YouTube, and be intrigued by this interesting conversation. We'll be right back, and then I'll introduce my guests to you. Stay tuned.
I came across power safety technology. So I introduced that into our residents, who are more than 4,000. And over the period, they have testified how power safety technology have saved them when the need arises.
Power safety. Safety is our hallmark.
Hi, so welcome back from the commercial break. And as I said, you're welcome back. You're watching the Fire Service in Focus here on the Fire Service TV. So we have two very important people to help us dissect the issue that under discussion. So to my immediate right, we have my own madam, our director of operations. She's my madam and my mother. Madam DCFO Roberta Ganson Agri. Madam, you're welcome.
Point of correction. It is Roberta Agri Ganson. Don't turn my name.
I'm sorry about that, madam.
Thank
I
you.
swear my mouth. And then my own very boss, I'm sure I won't switch it. DO to Desmond Eson Aka.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. I'm sure that one I didn't make a mistake. Thank you very much. So today we are discussing a very important topic that has to do with structures that get affected by fire. Both our panelists have extensive experience when it comes to firefighting in different scenarios. So I'll start with my madam, being the director of operations. Madam, in your professional assessment, which type of buildings normally do get affected by fires?
Thank you. Before I answer your question, when you look at the building regulation, you'd realize that building are grouped under three categories. They have Class A construction, Class B construction, and Class C construction. This is relevant because all businesses are not the same. Their burning behaviors are different. So depending on what the individual is going to use that particular building for would determine which type of structure to put up. Because if you do not take into consideration that, then what I can say is that You put the users of the building into some level of risk. You put the firefighter into some level of risk. If I can cite an example, let us look at somebody who wants to put up a creche. What are the ages of the children who are going to use the building? Or maybe you are trying to put up an aged home. What type of structure do you consider putting up? If your building is going to use for storage purpose, what are the products that you are going to store in that warehouse? All this would call for analyzing and putting up a befitted structure for the particular use of the buildings. But sometimes you would put up the right buildings, but you'd realize that the aggregate involved for the construction is diluted. Taking, for instance, the level of one bag of cement. What aggregate of stone? What aggregate of cement? But most of the times, owners of buildings do not have time to go to their sites to watch these things. So we leave it in the hands of the masonries to do it. And because of their personal gain, sometimes you'd realize that the sand is small, the stone is small, so it reduces the fire resistance of that particular structure. I was talking to a friend and I told the friend that gone are those days we find it difficult to get certain information. Now, because of the use of internet, we can all Google to know that which aggregate would give me a fire resistance structure. I believe if we are able to do that, it would help us as citizenry of the land.
Wow. And I think the conversation most of the time that has been out on the internet has been due to building collapse. People do not think that the component of the cement helps with fire resistance. So I'm sure this is a very good information that the media would, the general public would appreciate. So, what do you have to add to what Madam has said?
Yes, just as Madam said, buildings are categorized into various use and types, and therefore it behoves on us to know the right type of building in order to know its use. We should not put up a structure and then use it for a different purpose. Once that happens, then it defeats the purpose for which it was put up. And therefore, in putting up structures, from our viewpoint or standpoint, it is important that we put in measures to be able to safeguard lives, be whatever be their age or in terms of the occupancy, the human lives there. You can't put up a structure where you are going to use it for health, as a health facility, and then you put your wards at the upper floors. Those people obviously, if there is any fire emergency, it will be very difficult for them to escape. So these are some of the considerations that we put in. Let's say you are running an aged home where people they have mobility issues. They are old, therefore they cannot move about so easily. Then you place them on the upper floors. If there is any emergency, how do they escape easily? So these are some of the considerations. Maybe as time goes on, we'll be able to dissect and then throw more light on.
Okay, madam. So back to you. I'll stay a bit on the aggregate issue that you mentioned. Is it that there should be a standard aggregate, mixture aggregate for all buildings, or if depending on the use of the building, let's say a church a warehouse, a residence? Is it that we have a uniform aggregate for mixture in terms of fire resistance, or there's difference?
Um, Taking for instance, if I am putting up a warehouse structure for flammable materials, it calls for either a concrete structure with the right level of aggregate. Once that is done, it gives or it makes the building a fire resistance building. Here we don't have those paints, but unlike the advanced country, they have fire resistance paint. So apart from them putting up those structures, they are also going to apply the fire resistance paint that would delay even burning of the structures. The amount or the quantity of the occupancy that is going in would also determine the test or the resistive nature of the structure. But apart from that, there are standard aggregates for putting up structures. If it is to be molding of blocks, they are looking for a proportion of sand to a bag of cement. If it is about concrete, they are looking at certain quantities of stones, sand mixed with a bag of cement. But what you normally hear from the mason is that when you do that, you spend so much. So sometimes in their own way, if it is about 8 sand to a bag of sand, and for blocks, you would realize that they are now adding about 2 in addition to make it 10, so that they can get more blocks. But getting the more blocks reduces the resistance nature of the structure. I know that if it has to do with concrete, it is the proportion of a bag of cement to 2. But you'd realize that, when you do that, it will be expensive whilst you are building. So let us make it even 4:4. But at the end of the day, the owner of the building loses so much, but they would attribute the problem to the firefighter, that it is the firefighter that has used so much water. That is why they see the building collapsing. It is the firefighter who did not come in time. That is why the buildings are showing that deep sign of collapse. We have a duty. We have a duty to perform. You also have a duty to ensure that you have spent so much money in putting up the structure. Just sacrifice time to go to the site to inspect the work that they are doing for you. And then again, let us also use the right people. I'm not saying that all the masonries are doing that, but we still have some who are doing that, so that we can all fulfill our part of the game to ensure that we get the right things. The fireman is not blamed, you are also not blamed. And coupled with the load that we put in there, sometimes you'd realize that when there is fire and you look at the things that are being brought out from the room, you wonder if all these things were able to enter the room. They pack her to the ceiling level. And the structure, maybe that is a residential accommodation that has now changed its use to a storage structure without taking into consideration the spacing, the arrangement, and all these things. Where lies our faith? But the fireman will be blamed. So the owner of the property has a role to play. I also have a role to play. We call on the building inspectors to also go to the field to help us ensure the right structures are built for the right purposes.
Before I go back to my boss, I'll stay on you again. That's because I want to refer to the Makola, the unfortunate almost 1 week fire at Makola, where because you were very instrumental. That's why I want to stay on you. We realized that some of these buildings had glass and had used tiles. How does it affect positively or negatively when there's fires?
The glass, fine, but we should ask ourselves which type of glass. We have ordinary glasses. We have fire resistance glasses that rate from 30 minutes to 2 hours. So depending, just like we said earlier, what you are going to use the premises for should determine which type of glass I have to use in the construction. So it's all boiled down to we knowing what we are going to use the building for, so that it would influence our decision and our buying behavior of the right materials to put in.
Sir, so well, not to be regionally biased, but coming from your deep roots in Kumasi and being in Accra for a while, comparing, how do you see structures in Kumasi in relations to the prevalence of fires as compared to Accra?
Well, basically, if you check the structures that we have in these two regions that you've cited, they run through, basically they are the same. Either they are made up of concrete or blockwork, or they are either interspersed with the different types, let's say class A, B, or C, depending on how the owner wants it to be put up. But the bottom line here is, in as much as we as regulators have a special role in terms of ensuring that there are adequate safety measures in place in such facilities, the owners also have the ultimate responsibility to ensure that those buildings are built to or they are built for purpose, and therefore they have the responsibility to ensure that they engage professionals. The word is professionals. Most often than not, they don't engage these professionals, and therefore these are some of the reasons why we experience structural collapse. We experience some of them being razed down completely by fire and related emergencies. So once we are able to ensure that we engage professionals, some of these things are brought to the minimum. And then also talking about the structure, what we see or we ensure that they are incorporated right from the beginning of construction is that we have the passive kind of protection and then the active kinds of types of protection. So with the passive one, that is where we advise the technical advice as enshrined in our Act 537 as part of our function. We ensure that the construction right from its inception is incorporated with structures or materials or elements that would be able to help the building withstand fire. So let's say if you are doing your floors, we expect that if it is even about painting, you use fire-rated paints. And then if it is also about doing the concrete, like Madam said, the aggregates and all that must be highly considered. That is where the professionals come in. So when the professionals give you that kind of professional advice, it means that you are in for a good job, and that is what we all expect. So when those things are bypassed, when they are not properly utilized or they are enforced, that is where we have fires. With a little fire, because the building was not constructed with all the aggregates and all that, with the least exposure to heat, you see spallings in the walls. That is the plastering. You see that they will be peeling off, and sometimes too, even if it is concrete work, you see them caving and all that. They show signs. I remember in 2014, we went for a fire incident somewhere in Kumasi. It was a hostel, but I will not mention the name of the hostel. What happened was that it was about 5 story, yes, and then the fire happened on the topmost floor. So what happened was that you could see the ceiling to the next floor. You could see that though it was a concrete kind of structure, but you could see the tiles had all cracked, and you could see the building almost caving in from the next floor below the upper floor. So it tells you that, I mean, things did not go on well during the construction. And that is what we want to bring into the discussion, and let people understand that when we shortchange, when we don't go in for the professionals who know their work and would advise us to be able to, safety is costly. So sometimes people want to cut corners and then make some savings. But the long-term effect is that you even spend more to even put up these buildings. What is happening these days is that people tend to put up the entire structure, they roof it. Now, some quarters, they don't even want to plaster or add some plastering on the building, and therefore they want to go in for this. Is it plastic claddings? There is this local boards that they use to, beautify the exterior. Yes, making it look so nice. But we tend to forget that even if we want to use that kind of materials, they must be fire rated. That is why our doors are open 24/7. There is no fire station that you would go that you cannot access the station any day, anytime. So we would want to still call on the public to do us good. If you are a developer, or you want to put up a structure and you need contemporarily advice on the kind of materials to use to prevent or to safeguard your building, there is no other place than to go for help or to go for this kind of technical advice than the Ghana National Fire Service. In times past, we've had some families burn in fires, maybe a family of 5, 6, 7, because of hardcore burglar proofing and all that. They are all part of the structure. So when we are considering them, what informs our choices? Do we think about our lives, or the people that we are even going to occupy the building? Do we think about them? So these are some of the considerations that we want the general public we want to draw their attention to, so that in as much as we want them to live in a very fire-free environment, we need to be able to incorporate the right kind of materials so that we don't go in for these claddings that are not fire rated. You remember some years back, I think 2015 or 2016, Grenfell fire in London, where about, if my memory serves me right, more than 20-story structure got bent. And it started from below. But because of these exterior claddings, it was able to carry the fire to the upper floors, and more than 20 people died in that fire. So we should be able to look at all these things and then go in for the professionals, get in touch with the Ghana National Fire Service so that we can give you this advice. These advice are given virtually free of charge.
Most of the time, go to fire scenes and I'm engaging affected people or even rest people around. I always ask them that, why do you fear the thief who would come and steal a few things and leave your building intact, but you rather not fear the fire that will take away everything and push you to or push the building to be pulled down after the fire. So they should, as much as possible, as they are scared of thieves and they buy padlocks and they buy all those protective or claddings, they should again think about their safety, so that when the fire comes, it doesn't leave a very serious effect where you'd have to break down your building. So since we are still on this topic, before we go on a break, let me shift to the domestic fires, especially. Madam, in domestic fires at home, which areas of the house do you think normally gets affected by fires, and why does it spread?
When we look at the residential accommodation, where we would consider as a high risk place for the home is the kitchen, because of the occupancies involved. At the kitchen, you have the gas. At the kitchen, you have electricity. At the kitchen, you have oil. So name it. You can have all the classes of fires in the kitchen. But you look at it and you realize that most of these fires do not even start from the kitchen. They are starting from the bedrooms and the halls. And this has to do with the arrangement in place. You even go to people's kitchen and you realize that, or when you go and there is a fixed structure in at the kitchen, you would realize that the gas stove is even put at the entrance or the exit. Meanwhile, these are places that should be free from all these forms of naked fires. So you ask yourself, in times of emergency, where is the person passing? And if you are not lucky and the stove is closer to the door to your hall, because of theft, most people decide to even pack things behind their exit door. And should anything of such form happens, you realize the person is trapped in the kitchen. Just like I said earlier, that the kitchen is seen as the high risk place at home. But most of the fires we are getting now, you realize started from the hall, started from the bedroom. This has to do with our arrangements. If it is possible in our homes, let us arrange our things in such a way that we don't have any combustible, anything that can burn beneath our sockets, beneath our switch, beneath our regulators, maybe the fan regulator and any other form of a regulator. You go to people's home and you even realize that the TV is on a divider which is made of wood, and apart from that, it has a cover cloth on it, covering where the heat expels from. And should anything happens, the TV becomes one of the likely things to start fire in our homes. So once you have the cloth or maybe the teddy bear on it, these things can burn, so they will support burning. When they burn and they give off, they are likely to fall on another thing that can burn, and you realize that the fire now spreads. We bring everything to beautify our halls. We put everything in place in the bedroom, especially the women. Anything we see in town, we buy. At the end of the day, it ends in our room. What we are doing is that we are just increasing the things that can burn. And in fire science, we would say that you are increasing your fire load. And once the fire load are so much in your room, you realize that there is no isolation, there is no space created in between your arrangement. So it now becomes a fire chain. Once it starts from the right. It has food to eat to the left. But such arrangements in our homes are not helping us. Let us reduce the occupancy load or the fire load in our bedrooms, in our halls, in the rooms of our children. If it is a sleeping room, our little wardrobe, our bed, and maybe if the person is a student, his table and the chair. Once we have these few items there, you realize that there is enough space. So should something even happens, let's assume the person is a student, it affects his computer. The computer, the table alone burns. All other things are okay because there is space on the left, space on the right. So the fire does not travel. There is one thing fire starting and one thing fire spreading. I don't think that if anybody should come to his home and he realizes that my table is bent because there is no much food for it to eat, the fire has died off. I don't think you would have any locals to call the fire service to come and see if there was actually fire in your room or it is magic. It is no magic because you have done a perfect arrangement in your room. You have reduced the things that can help fire spread. It is reduced. So those spaces becomes a fire break for you to check fire spread. I am not leaving firemen out because they are equally human beings. Their wives are there, their children are there. And what I would want to say here is that as parents, let us take interest in our children's room to help them do the arrangement in their rooms. But I believe as parents, if that is our style, if that is our behavior of arranging things in our rooms, the child grows with it, and that is what he or she exhibits whilst growing up and arranging his room.
Thank you very much. And I think to top up with what Madam had said, with the TV being covered and all on a wooden platform, then coupled with an overloaded socket. So that socket, you'd see they have their computers, their TVs, and then maybe the rice cooker is even on that same table, cables running like the carpets. So coupled with it, culminates into a fire. So this one, the conversation is getting sweeter, it's getting hotter. When we come back, I'll get the point from my boss, Dio Aka. So let me remind you that we are sponsored by the kind courtesy of Blue Financial Services, over 13 years of experience in the financial service. They have exciting packages for government workers. People always ask me, "Oh, Eddie, na SKB in your Sika Blue Financial, Monkon Kopiska or no?" We'll be back shortly. You stay with us.
I came across power safety technology. So I introduced that into our residents, who are more than 4,000. And over the period, they have testified how power safety technology have saved them when the need arises.
Power safety. Safety is our hallmark.
Blue Financial Services Ghana Limited, licensed and regulated by the Bank of Ghana to give loans and accept deposits. Open a fixed deposit account starting from 100 Ghana cedis and earn an interest per annum. Call 030-3968-196. Locate us at Matty House, HP Nyamete Street, Ringway Estate, Osu. Blue Financial Services Ghana Limited. Every step with you, trust in Blue. Blue Financial.
Welcome back. Thank you for joining us, and for those who are now joining us, Akwaba. This is still the Fire Service in Focus on the Fire Service TV. Be reminded that we are proudly sponsored by Blue Financial Services. They have exciting loan offers for government workers, and you can feel free to call them. Call them on 0303 968 196. Right now, digitalization. So they're on WhatsApp. You can reach them on 0501 609 958, and you can have a conversation with them and to see how best they can find some money in your pocket so you pay small. And if you're enjoying the conversation and you want to join us, you can do so by calling us on 0509 608 744. 0509 608 744. We are looking at structural composition, or what goes into fires when it comes to structures, and how at homes and at the various building stages you protect yourself from fires. We've had very interesting conversations from our director operations and my own boss also, Dio Aka. So we've spoken a lot, and so we want to continue this interesting conversation. Dio Aka, before we went on a break, Madam had mentioned the fact that you enter some people's kitchens and you see them placing stoves close to the exit points. In your professional experience or observation, how does that one go a long way, either short term or long term, to affect domestic people who reside in homes when it comes to fires?
Right, thank you so much. That has been the practice for many homeowners or occupants of domestic buildings. You would go to people's residences, and the first thing that you notice after you open the main door to access their living room is to find maybe a refrigerator very close to the door. Sometimes you also see some electrical gadgets which are also fire hazard or considered fire hazards. At any point in time, they could develop a fault and start a fire. So my question is, when these gadgets start fire and they are closer to your exit point, you ask yourself, where are you going to use to escape? So that is the number one question that we should be asking ourselves. We normally advise for people not to keep their gas cylinders in their kitchen. The preferable place to put such cylinders is outside the kitchen, where you would secure them as well. You don't expose them to the weather, and in such a way that even in your absence, nobody can go and tamper with the valve and then the regulator and then get the gas leaking to create other unforeseen circumstances. So we would continue to do that. You would also realize that most of our homes have been standing for maybe the past 30, 40, 50 years. I remember there was a building around somewhere, Edum. It was known as 1930 or 1940 building. And one time it got bent, and fighting the fire was so difficult. The building had been standing since 1930 or 1940. And you could even imagine the kind of cables that were being used in that building and all that. So we ought to help ourselves for us to be able to keep our homes still standing and keeping on to serve the purpose for which they were built. We need to be able to obey the laws of the country. There are regulations. If you go to the electrical regulations, you would realize that for every 30 years, no matter how strong your electrical installations have been, you need to get them replaced. I mean, after every 10 years or so, you need to get an electrical engineer to come and do the testing and to check the integrity of the cables. If they are so useful, they will do their testing and then alert you. But after 30 years, we need to consider rewiring. And that is what most Ghanaian homes are not doing. And it behoves on all regulatory institutions, especially the Ghana National Fire Service, to also collaborate well with the other institutions. Because if you look at the fire statistics that we have, every year we record not less than 35% of the fires that we get from our domestic premises. So it clearly tells me that there is something that is going on, especially in that setup, that is letting these fires, we record such numbers. So if we are also able to do a bit more by way of intensifying our education, of which we are doing, I mean, this platform even serves as a catalyst to be able to do that, and then also enforce the regulation on our buildings. Like all stakeholders doing enforcement would go a long way to help curb these fires in our domestic setting. So if the wires are changed, if we keep or we do what we call proper housekeeping, where we don't how do you call it, encourage clutter, like Madam talked about. Sometimes people go and buy electronic devices, the coverings, the paper, or the how do you call it, those white things. Those things, people still keep them in their homes. They remove the fridge from its carton or whatever it is. Then instead of them to dispose of those things properly, they put them under their beds. And you know, when there's fire, those things will make the fire protract and then stay longer in that room. So it boils down to the fuel load. So please, all the things that we may not need in our homes, let us get rid of them. If we have more than enough, let us consider some orphanages, I mean, some charity, to be able to go and then donate some of the things so that we can reduce the fuel load in our homes, in our bedrooms, as much as possible, so that if there is any fire, the fire will not get so much fuel to kind of linger on to let the fire protract. So these are some of the things that we can do.
Top up with what my boss had said, it's when you drive through some parts of Accra, you'd see very old buildings with about 20 air conditions on one building. And then the question I ask myself is that at the time this building was being put up, air conditions were not probably considered. But you'd see a very old building and they have about 20 air conditions. So you can imagine the load of electricity on this very old wiring that has been done on the house. And so if the fire gets burned, they will say fire service. Madam, please.
I would want to add a little to what my brother is saying.
Yes,
These days, you even get to homes and you realize on the left is the switch, the sockets. Then opposite it is the air condition. And you are to place your bed even in this room. You realize that you are struggling to get a place to place the bed. Sizes of rooms are now reduced compared to the olden days. So where do you put the bed? Because when you put it on the left, you are placing it under a switch or a socket, which implies that if there is a problem with that fitting, it will discharge onto the bed to start burning. When you put it on the opposite side, it is also on the under the air condition. So you struggle to know where to place your bed and even your belongings. My brother mentioned we have so many professionals in this industry. We have the architect, we have the building technologist, we have the quantity surveyors, we have the electrical engineer. I would just plead that if the architect finishes with his work, the electrical engineer should take into consideration the size of the room and help us with the exact places to put these things, taking into consideration where belongings are going to be placed, where beds are going to be placed, so that we will know exactly where we are fixing these fittings, and at the end of the day it will not be disastrous for us. Because looking at a room of about 10 by 10, there is the wardrobe on your right. On the left is the toilet, or the toilet room. Then at the other side is the air condition. Opposite it is the switch. Where does the person put his bed? The person is compelled to either put it at where the regulator is, or where the AC is, and such things will not help us. So we are appealing to the players in this industries. Please let us visit the site sometimes and know what we are putting in there. I remember there was an electrician who was to do something for me in my mother's house. He brought it, and I said, no, I'm not going by it. Because beneath my windows, he had placed sockets there. This is where curtains are going to run over. And the curtains will be fixed for the socket should something happens. And I have to end up showing him where I want my sockets to be. Well, maybe because I have a little knowledge with fire. What about the person who do not have? So we are appealing to the electrical engineers. Please let us take into consideration all these things to help the citizenry. There are institutions and even homes that maybe assessment has been done and recommendations have been given out. Those concerned, we are pleading with you that let us visit those recommendations and help to correct issues, so that we can all contribute or help in reducing the occurrences of fires.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Since we are on the topic, I would want us to again look at means of escape. Means of escape. Well, we were taught back in training school, but the ordinary person out there doesn't know what means of escape is and the importance of means of escape during fire outbreaks. My boss, would you want to take that topic, please?
All right. So means of escape simply means the exit ways. We have the primary exit ways and then the secondary exit ways, so as to help facilitate the escape of individuals, human occupants, when there is an emergency in a building. So these emergencies or the exits are constructed according to standards. So every building and its standards that it goes with it. So once these means of escapes are obstructed, so for instance, if you have a structure with a long, let's say it's a corridor, where maybe there are damaged items like fridges or freezers or what have you, or there are spoiled items in the home or in the office or whatever, then you find people placing some of these maybe chairs or freezers or what have you in the corridor, blocking the access routes. You know, if the access is maybe the standard for the building is, let's say, about 3 feet or whatever standard that it is, and then you put your fridge or two or more, or a bench there, or even a chair or a broken table there, you have reduced the waste, you've reduced the size of it. So if it is meant for, if that access route is meant for 3 people to pass to enable them to escape during emergency, you have reduced that weight, and therefore it's going to make it possible for just one person. So, you know, for every structure, no matter its levels, like the floor levels, you should the occupant should not take more than 3 minutes to escape to safety. So the more it takes for human occupants to escape to the total place or relatively place of safety, then it means that you are putting lives at risk.
stampede.
Yes.
And
So it depends on
imminent death.
So for instance, if you go to a facility with a conference room where probably it can accommodate more than 50 or more, and then even the swing of direction of the exit, the door, matters. So if it opens inward, then it means that there could be stampede. So in an emergency where people are rushing out, they must be able to open the door towards their direction. But if it comes in, then it means it's going to affect them to escape easily, and that is where the stampede would come in. So we always want to advise. For instance, when I was at the district or in the district, and we had to approve some plans for permits. What I do consider is their exits. So if let's say you want to put up a domestic building or structure, and then I see that you don't have at least two-way entry or exit point, I will not recommend that such a facility should be approved. So I would consider, or I would put in my recommendation for two exits to be created, at least if for every room, and if it is possible per the design, to create two exit points. Why not? We advise so, and that really helped. So anytime I don't go for such meeting, my planning officer is not happy because he wouldn't get that kind of advice, and then in that. So means of escape is very important. We should not obstruct it. We should not put anything in its escape route so as to allow for easy escape of human occupant, because life is very much important to us.
Madam, so still on that topic, but veering small, occupancy load of a building, does it affect fires? And how does it affect fires? Maybe in relation to means of escape.
Let me veer a little to what my brother just said. I was brought up in a locals house. These buildings were built so many years ago, I believe even the birth of my parents. But you'd realize that everything was at its right place. And moving from the entrance, you go straight to the exit and easily lands you on a corridor, then onto the open place. On the corridor becomes my comparative place of safety. When I go out, I have gotten to my ultimate place of safety. So the law spells out that when I am going through this process, there should be nobody to help me. Once I get onto the route, things should lead me to where I am safe. But what are we seeing now? Corridors that were left those years when the building was put up. Citizens these days sees every space useful. So they now go in for plywood to even close the corridor. Let us not forget that the glue that joins the plywood, the veneers together, has petroleum base, which would contribute to burning. And now these spaces that we closed up, that is where we are putting all the things that we don't want. And this one is what is even closing up our path for use, or the doorway for us to even go out of our buildings to the safe place. If this is hindering you as the owner or the user of the building, how much more the fireman who is coming in to help you? He gets out there and he realizes that the flame level at the corridor is so high that he cannot even access to come in. For all you know, he looks at the altar and judge that, oh, the whole place is even burning. Meanwhile, it is because of the load that you are placing outside that is giving this picture. And because it is outside, and we even have the door, which is the wood, let us not forget that we also have the trap door, which has the plastic or the rubber sieve, which would also contribute to burning, because once it melts and it even falls on the door, it is going to support burning. Where lies our faith? So the occupancy load, it seriously hinders movement, especially when we don't consider what goes in there. We should reduce it so that there can be isolation. These things, fire service cannot do it. It behoves on you, the individual, to do it, to put your life safe, to put the lives of your children safe, and to put the emergency responder who is coming in. It could even happen that there is something happening to your child. You have called the ambulance to come in to help. They are coming in with the stretcher. How do they assess your corridor? How do they assess the route of escape? Because the items you have packed in there are so much that they cannot even turn. And let us not forget that when it comes to life, every minute is so important. So I have said it here once or twice. I am begging every Ghanaian, I am begging everyone who is listening to me, as much as possible, let us try to reduce the things that goes into our homes. Those are the things that will determine burning. And pity enough, sometimes you hear them saying, and the fire service did not come in time. No, because of the way you are seeing the fire fast moving and the fire growing, it seems to you the fireman has reduced. You have a role to play here. You have to reduce your occupancy, because if the materials in your home, if the load in your home, if the items in your home are not so much, the fire will not get so much food to eat. And you realize that my timing is within the spelled out time. I come because you have also been disciplined with the load in your home. No much harm has been caused. But if we do not do that, we have so much items packed in our homes, our corridors, our route of escape, there is no isolation, and we are forced to pack items sometimes beside coal pots, beside stove, and beneath sockets, which are the likely things to start the fire. And because these ones can burn, they also pick it and even get the fire spreading. The fireman has a role to play to help you to extinguish your fire. You also have a role to play by reducing the things that are in your house. If you don't need it, my brother has said it. The Bible says it is more blessing to give than to receive. Let us give it out because somebody needs it, as you also reduce the load.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We have a caller on the line. So, hi caller, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us.
Rashid calling from East Legon.
Yes, sir. Rashid, thank you very much for
I
joining
think
us.
this morning I witnessed an accident at East Legon,
Okay.
and I realized one of your trucks, one of your pickups passed. It was a service car, but they didn't stop. And I wanted to ask that why would such a thing happen? Because you thought they are for those accident stuff, but they didn't stop. They just moved because I saw one personnel sitting at the back. So I was like, he's a fire personnel, and then he's not attending to the accident scene, but rather left towards Accra side. So I wanted to ask that why would such a thing be happening when we know the fire service is good at accident scenes?
Okay, Rashid. With this said accident, were people trapped in the car, or it was just an accident?
Because
And
people were trapped in the car, and some of them were even on the floor, on the pavement and stuff. So I even took a screenshot of the car that passed because it was fire service pickup truck. I even took a screenshot of it, and I was like, we all know fire service has been doing education, but yet still, they just passed without stopping, or at least we were expecting them to say, oh, our men are coming, so we'll be here to wait till our men come. But they didn't stop, they just proceed to wherever they are going. So I wanted to find out that why would they be doing such a thing, and then yet still they tell us they are doing their work, but
okay, Rashid. So thank you very much for your call. It's a legitimate call that you made. One, I'm sure we had not received a call from at our control room reporting of this accident, and not every pickup you see would have the tools needed to be able to carry out the extrication process when they met it. So I'm sure there might be a perfect example, and I'm hoping, hopefully, in the future, people should do well to call our control rooms and not just presume. And at least we are happy that the awareness has been created that whenever there's an accident, fire service plays a role. So in the future, we are hoping that you'd go a step further by placing a call to the fire service. Unfortunately, we don't have any intelligence system that notifies us when there's an incident like that. So hopefully in the future, please do well to call on us. And we are sorry if our officers didn't stop. I'm sure they had other urgent things to also attend to. So we are very much sorry for that. And moving forward, please do well to reach us on our emergency lines, and you are assured or guaranteed of prompt response from us. Thank you very much for the call, Rashid. So, madam, sorry for cutting you. In conclusion, I would want to again. You said it's a collaborative effort between ourselves and the public. So we know we are gearing towards elections. We are gearing towards the festive season, especially with elections. We know you've been very instrumental in how things should be put together. What is the service doing in a minute or two? How is this? What is the service doing, or how is the service putting things together in place to ensure maximum safety, fire safety ahead of the elections and Christmas?
Okay, thank you. I believe we should all play our roles to be ambassadors of peace. A lot is going on the waves. Let us adhere to it. The day comes, you go, you vote, you go home, sit quietly, peacefully, and let us wait till the the vote would be counted to see who wins. But in all this, Ghana first. Yes, we know it's a crucial time because it is at the end of the year. That is when we get more of the fights. Let us be mindful as stakeholders with our decorations. We are not very mindful when we are doing these decorations. If you heard that, we even mentioned combustible materials, things that can burn, should not be closer to electrical fittings. But we have the Christmas tree that has cables running through it. When we are around, that is when we should switch on our socket. If we are leaving the house and we know our children are there, let us try to put it off and even take it the plugs from the sockets. With our decorations, let us keep the combustible materials away from electrical fittings. In the churches, that is where the curtains and others are used. The ribbons and others are used for decoration. We should be mindful of keeping combustible materials away from the curtains, especially those of us who are interested in decorating our stage. You go behind it and you realize that that is where all the electrical cables are. If we can put in place such checks and balances, it would help us. We thank the chief officer and the accounts department what they are pushing out for. Every RFO has been cautioned to do his servicing and others, even though periodically it is done. But we know that getting to the end of the year is where we have so much of these challenges. And I am receiving one letter or the other informing us of the state of the appliances, and the ones that have some challenges are being worked on. But I wish that even this year it will be said of us as a nation that, oh, even though we went through the festive season, but there was no fire recorded. If it is possible, it is the stakeholder to help us. And as part of our education, I will plead with everyone that let us be mindful. Those who will be doing the baking with the gas, let us place our cylinders outside. Let us do the soapy water to check our cylinders when we are going to fill them. Let us try the hoses to make sure there are no leakages. Those of us who have the hoses that has so many breaks on them, it is telling us that the insulators in it are dry. So there are spaces that could even carry the gas outside. Let us change our hoses. Let us not leave naked fire in the hands of little children. And these are a few of the things I would mention. When we are doing our party cookings and others and we are tired, let us try to switch off our gases. If it is coal pot, let us take it outside, extinguish it, and before we sleep. Because if we leave all these things ajar, they are the things that will bring the harm to us.
Thank you very much, madam. Thank you so much. My own boss, Diaka. I guess you are between management and the public. So, from the PR perspective, what are you, in about 2 minutes, what are you and your outfit also doing ahead of the elections and Christmas to safeguard the citizens?
All right, thank you very much. We want to maintain that the Ghana National Fire Service is ever ready and poised to serve the communities that we normally serve in this country. So from the PR perspective, we also have, in collaboration with the Safety Directorate, we have a lot of fire safety campaigns that we intend to roll out. Campaigns that will touch base with how to keep safe on our roads and also to prevent fires in our shops, in our pubs, in our restaurants, and even at our event centers, where we know a lot of people will be trooping into other places to enjoy themselves. So we would also want to caution the general public that fire safety is a shared responsibility, and therefore, if they see any fire or emergency, they shouldn't think that the fire service has a technology as it is now to be able to locate any kind of emergency on our roads or in our domestic premises or on our facilities. We have to be alerted, and we always say that early calls saves lives. When you call us early enough, that is where we are also able to mobilize the needed resources, which is closer to the emergency scene, so as to bring the needed help to ensure that lives are protected, properties are also safeguarded, and even to the extent of safeguarding the environment. So that is the core we want to maintain, that at any point in time, when you chance on any emergency, the first thing to do is to call on the professionals, the fire service, and we are ready to come in to assist you. And therefore, even as per our discussion, we should also try as much as possible. Developers must ensure to liaise with the professionals. Our doors are open 24/7 to kind of help you, to give you the technical advice that you need on your projects in terms of the burglar proofing to consider, the collapsible ones, the fire rated materials to incorporate in your building, the fire protection measures to be able to put up in order to minimize the impact of fire should there be. And let us always remember that our emergency numbers have not changed. They still remain 112, 192, or better still, 030 277 2446. Call us early, and then we'll also respond to save your life and property.
Thank you very much. As the accounts would say, open your na in my boss, my two bosses, I've said it all, and there's nothing I can say to top it. All I can say is thank you so much to my two wonderful bosses who've given us a very, phenomenal insights. There are things that personally I didn't even know. That, and I'm sure even the public now I've learned a lot. So, Madam, thank you so much for your wisdom. And Dioaka, thank you also so much. Thank you also to you watching us at home. Thank you to Blue Financial Services for giving us the backing, and to our Chief Fire Officer who's been gracious enough to get us this TV station for us to use it as a platform, as a channel to educate you, for you to stay safe. My name is ADO1 Alex Kengnati. This has been Fire Service in Focus. Thank you very much for joining us, and please do well to join us same time next week and be enlightened. Have a blessed day.